Oh, look, I'm hanging out because literally I've been waiting for this moment for 12 months. I was meant to be here around this time last year in Albury-Wodonga performing at the Hot House, and it got cancelled because of COVID. And so all I've been thinking about for 12 months is this. So I can't wait to get on stage. I mean, it's just, it's really exciting. And the theatre is going to be back to full capacity, and I'm really hoping audiences come along and pack it out and get amongst it and get amongst live performance again. It's really exciting.
It's a wonderful venue as well, isn't it?
Look, the Hot House has such a great reputation. I've worked on shows all across the country, and, so many actors you talk to have performed one show or another at the Hot House. So I feel really privileged to be bringing the work here, and it is a great venue, and I'm just looking forward to getting on stage and doing my show for a local audience. Yeah, it's like I can't wait. I mean, I've got rehearsal to get through, so there's still a lot of work to do. I can't put the cart before the horse, but I am very excited. Now,
Breaking the Castle, you've performed this already. You were in Canberra last year, you were saying?
Yeah, that's right. So it was performed at the Street Theatre in Canberra, and it was developed there as well. So in 2019, we had a development. Just after a week, I worked really hard for that week with the dramaturg Shelley Higgs. And
how does that work? What's that experience like?
Yeah, well, it was amazing. So basically, I'll give you the full story. So what happened was I had just come back from rehab, and I was I'd obviously had some time off performing, and my partner at the time said, your story's really interesting. You should write about it. And I thought, it's just my life. It's not that interesting. It's sort of just what happened. And she goes, and people would find it really interesting. And I had written something about my time when I was kind of, I guess, using drugs and alcohol, quite heavily. And I'd written something about that. And so I saw an ad on Facebook from the Street Theatre for their First Scene program, which is their development program. So I sent that monologue in to Caroline Stacey, the AD at the Street. It got selected for development, and so we just did a week. I reckon I worked, I don't know, I probably slept 4 or 5 hours a night. I just wrote for like 60, 70 hours that week. And at the end of the week, I had a 50-page script, and we performed it for about 30 people. It was a reading, but I walked the reading. I just couldn't sit and read, So we walked it around. Anyway, I remember standing there at the start just going, this could be the worst thing I've ever done in my life. I've never written a play before. I mean, I've got a background in journalism, so I've had stuff published, so writing is not unfamiliar to me, but I've never written a play, and I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Anyway, could have heard a pin drop, and I got laughs in all the right places, and at the end of the show, Caroline, the AD at the Street Theatre, said, I want to put it on next year. And Carla Conway, who's the AD at the Hot House here, happened to be in the audience, which I didn't know, and said, we want to put it on too. So I had to play. But the development process was amazing. It was just like, this doesn't work, cut this, that's boring, this doesn't make sense. And you have to be ruthless with it, you really do. And I've been ruthless with it. I mean, I used COVID. We reshaped the whole play, even though last season was critically successful. We had great feedback from audiences. I've changed the play again. We swapped it around. I've cut stuff. I've put red lines through it. I've introduced new images. I mean, you just got to be hard on the work. And I think the harder you are on the work, in a loving way, it's tough love on your script, the better it's getting, and the more audiences are going to enjoy it. So I've used COVID really productively to just really kind of do as much as I can on the script to make it as tight as possible.
It's interesting, though, because obviously this is something that's really personal as well. It's about your life experience. But as you said, I mean, you weren't sleeping, you were just writing. So obviously it needed to come out. Yeah.
Look, I have to be honest. It's kind of... Initially, it was a very personal thing, writing the story, obviously, because it goes to, I talk about some really traumatic things that have happened in my life. But the more I started to write it, the more I realised that this is a story that needs to be told for a lot of people. And what I realised after the season in Canberra was this story's healing, because there were people in the foyer after the show who would come up to me and go, look, that was my brother. That's me. I had people from Alcoholics Anonymous groups like that coming, thank you for sharing your story. It's helping me heal. So when you start to get that feedback, I mean, it's great to get good reviews. Don't get me wrong. Of course, that's great for the ego. But when you've got another human being coming up to you and going, you touch my heart. You've changed the way I've seen addiction. You've changed the way I see addicts. I mean, you're doing some important stuff there, I think, and you're doing it through art. So that kind of has spurred me on to go, you know what, this story is really important to tell. And also, like, you know, I'm happy to talk about my experience. I lived in King's Cross for a while, and I was hanging out with some people there from, you know, really different socioeconomic background to me. There were people that I was kind of, I guess, taking drugs with at the time. I was lucky enough to go to this rehab, a very expensive rehab, that a close friend of mine paid for me to go to. And there were people there with lots of money, but they had the same problems all these people I was kicking around the cross with. There was no difference to their stories. They all had similar childhood trauma, which sort of led to this addiction. And just some people had money to get rehabilitated, and the people that I was with in the cross didn't have the money to go to a rehabilitation. And also in Australia, there aren't great rehabilitations, and in fact, the best rehabilitations are all overseas. So anyway, that's another topic for discussion, you know, because, you know, there's this punitive approach in Australia to addicts and addiction that doesn't work. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's something that this nation needs to talk about is how we rehabilitate people on the edges and who are struggling. But the point I'm trying to make is, I guess, about it being a personal story. Even though it is my personal story, it's really reflective of the stories of all those people I know who I've met from all walks of life who suffer from addiction. And I literally had someone come up to me at the end of the show in Canberra and said, "You've changed the way I will look at people with addiction." And you know, if you're doing that through art, you know, you feel like you're sort of making a bit of a difference. So it's great.
On ABC Goulburn Murray, you're hearing from Peter Cook, who will be presenting for you Breaking the Castle at Hothouse Theatre. And it's interesting, you know, when you say that people come up and talk to you, I mean, people are quick, and we know this in radio as well, they're quick to criticise and tell you you're pronouncing that wrong, but people actually thanking you and saying, hey, good job, that's rare, and that really means something, that people feel strongly enough to come and speak with you after the show. I mean, that's a huge effort.
It's incredible, and, you know, you can go to the theatre and, you know, sometimes you can kind of go, oh, that was nice, and you go home and have a cup of tea and forget about it. My show is not that. You'll think about my show for a long time after seeing it. And, you know, I think that's what sort of art should be, you know, in a lot of places. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely places for escapism and entertainment, and that's totally part of it. But the art I'm interested in making is art that challenges and confronts and but also makes people laugh.
I was about to say, you did mention earlier when you did your walkthrough that you got the laughs in the right places. So we get some laughs. It's not going to be, you know.
Yeah, 100%. It's really important to mention that. A story like this that touches on some quite dark topics, you have to find as many moments as possible for humour. I mean, you know, there's a moment in one of the darkest sort of parts of this play that I've just written something that, you know, we've got a really good belly laugh from the audience because it's important. And some things are so serious, you can only tell them through humour. Yeah. And, you know, the show's also a little bit about what it's like to be an out-of-work actor, which I know a lot about.
What a year it's been.
Yeah. So, but, you know, my experiences over the last 15 years in this industry and, like, how you get treated when you're just an actor and the audition process. And so, you know, there's lots of humour around that. But, yeah, look, I've as many places as I could find a laugh or I could find some humour, you know, that's throughout the show. So the audience literally, and, you know, this is no word of a lie, every night in Canberra, the audience would laugh and they would cry. And I don't think you can ask much more from an experience at the theatre than to laugh and cry as an audience member, you know, like, and so I felt like it was kind of job done in that regard. But, you know, it's important that the humour is there, and it's important that we talk about that serious stuff. And, you know, just looking at, there was something on the drum during the week I watched, and they said that suicide is the biggest cause of death in Australia for people between 18 and 44. Men would make up 3/4 of that number. Regional men even more. So it's a serious pandemic in this country. My play touches on that. I've certainly been through periods of my life where, you know, that's on my mind. And what's really important, I think, about the play and the character that you see in the play, Dave, the main character, that's obviously based on my experience, is the way that he finds help is to open up and become vulnerable. And I think it's really important for men in this country to start to understand that it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to be in touch with your emotions, and it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to reach out. Because, you know, it's so sad when you think about the number of men that probably have taken their lives simply because there's this idea of masculinity that exists in this country that doesn't allow for you to connect with your emotions and articulate them. And it's dangerous, and it shouldn't be the message that we're teaching young boys, you know. And the only way I got better was to start to open up, you know. And I got offered help. I refused it initially. I refused the help, and then I realised I needed it, and I took it. And my life has been exponentially better since I said yes to getting help, you know. So I just think it's this play in particular, you know, we see this character go through this journey of opening up and talking about his life, finding out where this inner shame and this internal rage comes from, connecting with that, talking about that, bringing that out into the open, and that being the key to him healing, you know, spiritually, physically and emotionally. And I think there's so much, you know, when Grace Tame leaned into the microphone, you know, at the National Press Club and said, "and men," I knew I was one of those men. And I know a lot of men who are suffering from addiction because of what's happened to them in the past, the abuse that's happened to them in the past, that they feel like they can't talk about because it's so shameful for them to talk about. And that needs to change. That really needs to change. And, you know, and I hope my play can start a conversation about that as well. Yeah.
Breaking the Castle, that's the name of the play, and Peter Cook is the man you'll be watching on stage. And even us having this conversation, you know, this helps, doesn't it? Because it is about being able to have these conversations.
100%, you know, we need to, and I would encourage, you know, especially because it's really hard to get men over 40 to come to the theatre.
Come on, fellas.
Exactly. Come on, fellas. Come and watch, and I promise, you know, you'll see a bit of yourself reflected on stage. And, you know, if there are some women out there who really want to go to the theatre and bring their partners, I can promise you, if you want to take them to a theatre show, this is the one. Because I had mates that don't go to the theatre that came to support me in Canberra, and they said it's like nothing they've ever seen on stage before. We do some great things theatrically, so come and take a risk, especially if you're a bloke. Come and watch another 40-year-old bloke on stage and have a laugh and go on this journey with him. And I promise you'll be rewarded at the end of it. You know, it is really hard to get men who are stuck and don't want to go to the theatre to come. I mean, you know, like before I became an actor, I was a front row forward. You know, so just because you go to the theatre doesn't mean you're not a man. You can be a man and be in contact with your emotions, and then go out and play rugby league, you know, on the Saturday, and there's room for all of it. So come to the theatre.